Welcome to Needham School Spotlight. I'm Dan Goody-Kanst, Superintendent of Schools. The Needham Public Schools prides itself on trying to provide and to nurture a learning environment that's equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. Joining me today for a conversation about that learning environment are several student leaders at Needham High School who are trying to keep Needham High School safe. I want to welcome our students advocating for equity at Needham High School. I'd like to welcome Julia Rozzo, Tristan Corin, Angelo Zamaris, Dari Adebeson, Kai Lee, Maddie Molaris, and Jonathan Shia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, Dari, let's start with you. What is SAFE, S-A-F-E, all about?
So the name was made by me and Miss Pinos. Shout out to Miss Pinos. We came up with the name as something for our group to stand by, and something that has true definition and true meaning, because we were starting off as a group that wanted a safe place for students of color to feel like they're understood and they're being watched over and have a place where they can express themselves about how they're really feeling. So it was actually an acronym for Students Advocating for Equity, and that was made by me. So yeah.
Good job on making that name. So why is a club, a conversation, a group like that important at Needham High School to have a safe place, if you will, for students of color and for other students? Why did that become important?
Well, I would say last year there was an incident of graffiti and racial homophobic activity in the school, and as a school, we had a walkout, and from that walkout, we wanted to create a space where students of color felt like they were welcomed and comforted in and within the school. So we decided to branch off and make the group safe. Students advocating for equity, stuff that we can advocate for the kids, students of color, and what they need and what they don't have.
You mentioned, there's a lot here. There's a lot I want to ask about. So you mentioned the walkout last February, I believe it was.
Yes.
So I will tell you that when I first heard of the walkout as superintendent, I was very anxious about students want to do what and what's going on, and how many of you participated in the walkout? All of you participated in the walkout. How many students, Kai, are involved in SAFE? Or is
it varies, honestly. Sometimes a lot of people come, sometimes a lot of people don't.
Okay, but this is kind of the core group.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so the walkout was, say a little bit more about what happened during the walkout. Anybody want to share what?
So during the walkout, there was a lot of people who were affected by the events that happened before it, and it was organized by a bunch of senior kids. We were juniors at the time, and they wanted to express their displeasure with what's going on with students at the school and why things need to change amongst them. So for a for an event that wouldn't affect school or what we need to do as students, we decided a walkout would be the best option, where we would stand outside and let it be known that we are displeased with what's going on in our school.
Can I add to that? That day, I don't remember how we found out. I'm pretty sure it was probably through email. But I think the second to last block of the day, I got a text in a group chat, and it was all of the seniors, the students of color,
MECO
students, and they were saying I think we should have a walkout. We need to do something about this. Nothing's ever been done. And I honestly didn't think it would follow through, and a lot of people that night were saying you guys shouldn't go against faculty, which was not what we were trying to do. It was pretty much just against the students who were doing it and just to make a statement. And it was really successful, and a lot of people doubted us and thought it was gonna turn into something that was just trashy and wouldn't even get across anyone. But we worked so hard that night to contact news channels and get a whole bunch of people into it, and everything that we tried followed through.
You were successful.
Very.
The superintendent was nervous.
Very.
And I will tell you that I regret that I was not there that day. I stayed off campus to let the high school manage. I should have been there, though. I wish I had been there to be there with you and stand alongside you. No, I don't want walkouts all the time. I really don't.
Neither do we.
But I wish, and I know you don't either, but I wish I had been there. That was a missed opportunity for me. Angelo, so this walkout happened and other things have happened, and then so SAFE is born from your leadership. What do you think has changed? And anyone can finish Angelo's thoughts. What has changed since that walkout? And what needs to change?
Well, I'd say that ever since the walkout happened, more people started becoming aware that there's been problems, and I guess people are starting to put together why we have like join the conversations occurring, and also like the one day. Like at first, people thought like, oh, we're just having one day. What does this have to do with anything? But now people understand that we have one day because we still have problems. People are still doing these things, but like there's still some problems that haven't changed after the walkout. Like this year, I think there were 2 times where there was, I think, racist and anti-Semitic graffiti, like within a couple of weeks of each other. So there's still there's still kind of hate in the school. So we're still working on trying to kind of fix that.
Do you think the graffiti or the hate or the language, anti-Semitic or homophobic or racist language, is that a lot of people? Is it a few people? Jonathan, what's your experience with that, or what's your perspective?
I would say we don't know how many people it is, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter, because it really only has to be one person saying something if they hear or see something. And adding on to what Angelo said, I think like after the walkout last year, I think people are more fine-tuned, is what I would say, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this year I've seen people more willing to say something. Like one of the conflicts I had with myself was that I felt like I was very passive, and that's one of the reasons why when I heard about SAFE, I wanted to join, because I felt like during my 3 years here, I felt like there were opportunities where I had decided to just let things pass. And it was something that, looking back on now, I feel like I definitely should have said something. And I don't want to shame myself for not saying anything, but I do think the idea of pacificity, I think, is something that we should be looking to change.
2 things. One is, you're absolutely right. Even one comment or one incident of racist graffiti, for example, that damages a community. That hurts everyone, particularly the impacted directed group, but it impacts everybody. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter to the degree. I also think what you're saying is that you kind of found your voice in all of this, and you realize that you have a voice. Julia, how did you find your voice in this work? What does that look like?
So Tristan actually brought up the fact of, we're making this group. This is kind of where our goal is going to be going. I know that you've been in other groups. You certainly like speaking in front of people. Do you want to come and just kind of see what it is? And I knew Beth Panels from also Own Your Piece. So she had brought it up as well, and I was like, okay, let's go see what this is. And I never really left. I think it was a group of people certainly determined, certainly with everything that's going on both in the community of the Needham High School, but also in the community as a whole of the United States. And in the political climate we have now, it's something that people are afraid to talk about. They're afraid to talk about race. They're afraid to talk about things that are considered sensitive or perhaps complicated subjects. And while to a point, yes, it's perhaps not something you want to bring up with the first person you meet, like right off the bat, it is something that we're surrounded with, and it is something that we're still fighting for. So I think for me, it's really about being able to educate people, being able to bring some of these conversations, these topics to light in a non-argumentative, more of a conversation. And so make that the norm, make it that it isn't something, no, we can't talk about that, but it's something, I want to hear what you have to say about it to be able to talk to you. And I think that we've been pretty successful. I mean, it's been 1 year and we're already here, so.
You said something that strikes a chord with me. I'm 60 years old. I know you think I'm much younger.
I did.
And I have to tell you that in my generation, talking about race talking about homophobia, having conversations like that is a challenge for many folks in my generation and older. The leaders in this is your generation. You,
Right.
you are unafraid, you are courageous, you are earnest, as Jonathan, as all of you are speaking about, to finally step up and say, you know, we have to have these conversations. And you know what? Sometimes the conversations about race, for example, they're tricky and they're uncomfortable.
Right.
But avoiding them is even worse in some ways, as you're
Absolutely.
suggesting, so that you are brave for making sure that your voice stands out, because you are going to lead the way. Maddie, I wonder if you could share with our audience, what are some of the things that SAFE is doing? What are some of the activities, plans that are ongoing at Needham High School?
Well, we recently hosted Join the Conversation. a few
Let's
weeks
join
ago.
the conversation.
I'm actually not a part of it. I'm part of something else. So if someone else wants to explain it.
So our Join the Conversation was basically after-school event that we had that the school helped us lead about what we were trying to do and what was going on with equity and race and a lot of intersectionality stuff.
It's an open invitation.
Right, it was an open invitation event where everyone would come.
Just students?
No, students, faculty,
Faculty.
anyone.
Okay.
Right.
Whoever was in the building that was
Right.
willing to come.
Exactly. And so that was held a few weeks ago. And I would say it was a great conversation, though it wasn't many students, which I wasn't completely surprised about, to be completely honest. Talking about like how people see one day or see something like that, they're not really sure like why is it a thing. But I guess you're not going to see until you get there, but we're still first year. It's just getting started. So we had a very good conversation with, I would say like 10 students maybe, and then like another 10 faculty, which I think was very, very helpful, and that we were able to communicate. All the principals were there, Miss C, Mr. Cole, Mr. Ford, Mr. Seacott, a lot of the English teachers, guidance counselors. I think it was a very good variation of people, and it was a good conversation to have.
So, thank you for clarifying that. As Maddie, you started that. What are some of the other activities that SAFE has been involved in?
Throughout this year and over last summer too, we were planning courageous conversations on race, and a group of 3 or 4 of us, Julia was in my group, would go into freshman classes and lead conversations on race and go through slideshows and different scenarios and ask them questions. And we did a lot of planning and preparation before, because it's really hard talking with anyone, more or less freshmen, about race. So we needed to do it in a way that would get them engaged and be easy to understand.
So how did the freshmen react? I'm very curious. How many classes did you both visit?
We did
two classes. There's
2 sessions with 1 class.
But there were multiple groups. I think there were about
Mhm.
like 6 groups, so there were probably,
And you're all doing that?
yes.
Yeah, I did it.
We were all part of it.
So what would a freshman say in a class?
So-
Why don't you begin, and then Daria, why don't you?
Well, honestly, they were very reluctant to talk. I'm not sure.
It contradicts what I just said about you were taking the lead in this,
Yeah.
but.
Not exactly though, because they started off kind of quiet, but by the second time we went in, they're like, "Oh, I know who you are. You're
Right.
not some random people giving me a presentation."
The stuff they were saying was, the content was there. It was really, they had really good ideas. It was just
Yeah.
getting them to
Getting them
talk.
to-
Yeah.
Right.
What was your experience, Daria?
The common misconception about the freshmen is that they're incapable of understanding these type of like sensitive topics, like seeing race or stuff like that. Like the classrooms I would go to, there'll usually be like one student of color, and they'll see these things that we're talking about, and they're like, okay, I understand this. Just that I'm surprised that it's being like brought up and like it's being addressed, because I've been going to like the elementary schools here and like the middle schools here, and it never gets brought up. And now in high school, it's finally getting brought up by upperclassmen,
Right.
and being able to like help them understand that it's like really, really good. It's a good feeling.
If I might say something, I'm not part of CCOR, but I've been.
CCOR, just to be clear, is Courageous Conversations
sorry,
on
that's
Race.
the-
Yes.
the
Because I'm
acronym.
trying to keep track of all the
Yeah,
projects.
Sorry.
I do spend a lot of time with them as they're planning it though, and I would say like, even though it sounded like it was hard to get them to talk at the beginning, I would say the fact that it's upperclassmen, like your peers, like people you might see in the hallway, I think that made it much more impactful and probably much easier than it would be if it were, I would say, an adult. Because I think it sounds different when it's coming from a peer, when it's coming from someone of your age. So I think that's.
I think you're absolutely right about that. That's why I want to emphasize again that it is so powerful to have you and your voice engaged with your peers, but also with me and my generation, because you are taking the lead on this. You are helping shape these conversations to make sure that this climate, that this environment is positive and inclusive and welcoming. And it can be a challenge, so, and you know that. So I've heard too that you have conducted, I don't know, Kyle, you can maybe fill me in on this, a survey, another one of your projects that SAFE is involved in. What is the survey all about?
There were a few surveys.
Okay.
Julia made one, and at the end of each lesson for our CCOR presentations, we pushed out a survey. Basically, I think it was just based on like opinions.
To get some feedback?
Yeah,
Yes.
to see what we
Yes.
could improve
Okay.
on and how it could be better.
But also to see kind of like what did they get out of it? Was there something perhaps that they weren't comfortable enough to share at the moment, but they might bring it up later? So it was kind of to see an overall picture of did you learn anything, but also an overall picture of what would you like to see next time. Then as Kaya said before, I'd also made a couple other surveys more recently for the Join the Conversation, one for faculty and one for students. Basically the same exact questions, but a little differently naturally so that the wording made sense. And to get some feedback not only on equity in general at the Needham High School, but also how race and racial conversations were taken. And so, for example, for faculty, there's a question like, when you are like confronted with a situation of this sort, or with an issue that you're not sure how to manage it exactly, how do you go about facing it? How do you go about talking to your students? Because sometimes over the PA, we get an announcement, it's like, oh, I wasn't ready for that.
Right.
So it was really interesting to see feedback both from faculty and from students, and we were able to use a lot of that data in the conversation later. So I think it was absolutely invaluable.
I also hear that you were working on a poster campaign. Is that ongoing? Is it started? Is that, or is
It's
Ongoing.
it's ongoing? And that's to continue to raise awareness. I
Right.
mean, what I'm hearing is that you're very much involved in raising awareness and having conversations
Right.
in different settings to engage
Everyone.
students in these conversations. You know, as I'm listening to you, I can't help but be reminded of you know, the power of your voice and you taking the leadership, you know, with the support of Ms. Pinels and Mr. Ford. I have to give a shout out to both of them.
Yes,
Yes,
of course.
absolutely.
And thank them. Yeah. A lot of this comes off of some work that the district did in the last year, and that was in regards to our the Needham Public Schools equity audit.
Yes.
That I think you have some familiarity with, or
We read it in English class last year, actually.
You read it, okay.
Yeah, we had to
Now, I have to
present it.
tell you, we asked someone to come in, someone who's objective, and meet with literally hundreds of folks, teachers and students and parents, and tell us how are we doing when it comes to equity in the Needham Public Schools. You know, you mentioned very quickly the term, Tristan, intersectionality, that,
Yes.
you know, someone is not just one thing,
No.
but that you can be black and a woman, you can be Latinx and gay, and I mean, they're different,
Right.
you know, we all have different lives and different components
Mhm.
to whom we are. And one of the things that I learned through this audit, in the audit though, what I was upset about, and as a superintendent I was concerned about, is what some of the things students said. And I just wanted to read to you some of the comments that students reported they heard in their classrooms over the last couple of years. You can't be a princess if you are brown. Brown is bad, ugly, and scary. Don't touch me if you are brown. All Latinos are from Mexico. They can't speak English and they don't have work. Go back to your country. We don't want you here. You can never be pretty because you're brown. I have to tell you, I read this in this report, and I thought, where is the school system they're talking about? And it turns out it's the Needham Public Schools. Have you heard things like that growing up in the Needham Public
Yes.
Schools?
Yes.
I want to ask you about that.
One thing is that I'm originally from Milton, and I've been to 3 different high schools, and these type of things happening everywhere. It's built in our society. People believe that they're superior to another person, duly based to like they're different, and that's not an okay thing. But it's how things have been since like the beginning of time. So.
For 100 years.
This is not just Needham High School
Yeah.
or Needham Public
Yeah.
School. So
Yeah,
But it is definitely something that has happened throughout the years. Last year, I was a part of Speak Out, and I spoke on microaggressions, which are things that can be said accidentally or without a certain impact, but can be taken a completely different way from the person.
Give an example of a microaggression.
I would
Okay,
say,
any one of you can, if you have.
Can I touch your hair?
yeah, can I touch your
Can
hair?
I touch your hair? Someone asked you to touch your hair. Has someone done that to you?
Yes.
They've asked it multiple times.
So many times.
Okay.
You're pretty for a black girl. You would be a great maid. Stuff like that. Slight things that like, how do you trick or treat in an apartment house because you live in Boston?
And so the micro piece is in itself, it's this small comment
Yes.
or this request to touch one's hair. But over time,
Yeah.
there's an impact.
Right.
Becomes bigger.
in
Because they build up. Because you
Yes.
experience several microaggressions like throughout your life. Eventually, like
Or you hear the
just
same
have
ones.
you've heard too many, and you like like that one last person who says something really ignorant and they don't even realize that it's a microaggression. They could get all of your anger from several other ones in your past life. Like
It's just the build-up.
it's just a buildup.
And
of
I would
things.
imagine that it would build up, and these tapes are playing in your head that, yeah, I'm going into this room, I can anticipate what's going to happen and who's going to say what, and it just becomes almost part of the landscape, which has got to be demeaning
Yes.
and hurtful and diminishes a human being
You
over time.
learn who to avoid or where not to go. And like for me, I don't happen to be Latino. People have definitely asked me, "Are you?" or made comments in regard to the fact that I might be Latina. And while I don't usually take it as an insult, because like, no, sorry, I know that sometimes it is meant as an insult, or it is kind of it's an argument. It's not like that's interesting. So I think you just kind of learn like, okay, like after this class, I just need to head out and go to the next class.
Right.
And there's certainly a support system that's built into the school, absolutely. And they try their best, they really do. But what it comes down to is that if students aren't understanding how hurtful it can be or how detrimental it can be to anyone's education, let alone like simply social skills, because you never know how to take things anymore. I think that it is something that students need to be aware of and certainly need to gain more knowledge about. Be careful how you say things.
But I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here,
Yeah.
and that's why SAFE is one of the things, that's why CORE is one of the things, and that's why we try to have those join the conversation so everyone can be educated and taught to, instead of say a microaggression, and even if the intent can be completely different than the impact, and we want to teach the difference in that, and the ands and ors, or the buts and ands, and just small things that completely flip the conversation so you can have a nice conversation with somebody instead of having you say something and then they give you a disgust look and they walk away, or they just you just lose relationships.
Right.
Angela, I'm wondering, as I sit here listening to this conversation, what do you think as you hear this conversation? What are next steps for SAFE? You can start that off and someone else can complete it. But what else? Where do we go beyond where we are right now?
I mean, I'd say the next steps would be, well, since the year's ending, we have to find people to kind of take over our place because we're all going to college, or most of us are going to college or going somewhere
So
new.
that's right. Who's back next year? You're all-
None of us. Class of
we're all-
2019.
Yeah, we're all seniors, so.
Well, see, now,
That's
here's
the
the thing.
most
I haven't
important
signed
part
the
about
diplomas
it.
yet, so I could hold a couple of you back.
Yes.
But that leadership to continue is so incredibly important.
Right.
Okay, so we've got to get
Yeah.
some.
But I would say within that, I would say we do have a few leaders that are coming next. There are students. We aren't just seniors. Like in SAFE, there are a lot of seniors more than juniors, but within core, it's
yeah.
a senior and junior thing. So we're going to have the juniors that were already there are still going to be able to teach and be able to learn. And then we're also putting in a class that will be happening, a core class that will, students will teach other students how to teach freshmen.
And have these conversations.
Right.
Jonathan, what
Yes.
were you going to add to that, Nadari?
I remembered very early on in the year, like when we were still planning a lot of things, we had a group from Newton South.
Yes.
Newton South come in, and they had been doing something very similar to this. The only difference was that they've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it was pretty established. So they came and talked to us about how they did it, and basically what they do is that every single year they will bring in a large batch of new people and have the previous members of the group teach everything to them before they take off.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's important for us because right now we're like 90% seniors.
I think
Yeah.
it's incredibly important that the next several weeks, the next couple of months, you
Yeah.
spend your time doing that, because the worst thing in the world is if the conversation ends
Yes.
when you graduate. I mean,
Right.
you've begun such a powerful way of getting students' voice to wake us up, to embolden us, to encourage us to speak out. You need to be able to do that. Now, we only have a little bit of time, but realizing that you're all seniors and you're going to be moving on, do any one of you, or all of you, very quickly, what's advice you're going to give me? Because you will move on, but I'm staying, because I'd like to for a while. What's advice you give the superintendent about talking about race, or about promoting SAFE, or making sure our schools are welcoming and inclusive? Dari?
I would suggest just to look at that from the eyes of a student who's going to a school district where they're part of the minority, and they're going there to get their education, but they're also going there to make friends and to live their life and enter a new stage of life where they're growing up. And then there's going to be a certain group of kids who see them differently and might either A, treat them differently and like treat them like they don't matter, or B, treat them as one of their own and welcome them and like see no difference.
Okay, so make
of
sure
that.
I keep in mind the perspective of the students. and
Yes,
everything.
definitely.
What's another piece of advice? Andy?
Well, we led something on one day, a class, and the conversations were amazing. So I think if we had more scheduled time for students to go into, not classes, but maybe just small groups, interact with small groups of students of all grades, then that would be really beneficial to everyone.
I'd love to, by the way, get some high school students to talk to middle school students and elementary
Oh, yeah.
schools, because you guys are rock stars when you go to the middle school and the
Yeah.
elementary school. You know that, so.
Yeah.
One more piece of advice, Angela.
I was thinking, like, I think Mr. Seacott said it during our joining conversation, but like, these things kind of have to be forced. You can't just kind of integrate this naturally. So I guess faculty need to almost integrate this in like the education system and kind of have some forced conversations, because that's the only way this can continue.
And the key is-
Discomfort. of
Yeah,
the
this comfort is
catalyst for
important.
learning.
It's like,
So to be intentional and to put it out there.
yes.
Yes.
Well, those are, make sure that I'm keeping in mind the perspective of students, make sure that we schedule more time, maybe think about those younger students, I can be involved in that, and to be intentional, but also to make sure that we have the conversation. You have taught me a lot today, you have over your 13 years in the Needham Public Schools, so I appreciate that. I appreciate you being courageous and powerful in sharing your voice with your peers, with me, with my generation, and with my colleagues. And I look forward to making sure that your work and your voice continues on long after you're graduating. I'm committing to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much for these conversations.
Thank you so much.